Hey there, my name is Shane Craddock, and this is the Inner Edge podcast, where I share a different take on how to lead and live a sustainable high performance life. Over the course of different episodes, I'm going to challenge the belief that tension, stress, and struggle are essential to success and creativity. My experience is that there's an easier way, there's a better way, and indeed there's an essential way that we need to explore for the times that we live in. So let's go ahead, let's jump in and explore. Hi there, and welcome to today's episode with myself, Shane Craddock, where we're going to be talking about the right way, the wrong way, and your way. Now, I'm often asked at workshops, or if I'm speaking at an event or doing a Q&A, people will keep asking, like, well, what's your technique for this? Or what's your habit for this? Or how do you start your morning, Shane? How do you end your day? And the world is obsessed with hacks and techniques, and you can see that in the sales of self-help books, even videos online. It's like, what's the hack? What does a millionaire do? How does a billionaire think? And they're all very interesting questions. And I do have an approach to my morning that I mostly do, and I do have an approach to my day that I mostly do. And I generally encourage people to do those things, especially if they're simple, because I found that they've worked for me. So everything I do pretty much with my clients, I will say, hey, well, look, this is what I do. If you want to, you can try it out. And I, for many years, was obsessed with finding the right way. Now, the right way to me implied, of course, that I'm doing it the wrong way. So if I'm doing it the wrong way, I need to find out who's doing it the right way. So let's talk to this guy or this woman and say, well, what are you doing? Let's read books. Let's listen to podcasts like this one. What's the right way? But what I found myself was that, and this is both in terms of trying to find the right way, as in like what works better for me. And then also when I shared information with people, I found that actually my way didn't always work for them, but also curiously, somebody else's way wouldn't work for me. And very often though, I get annoyed at myself, or I'd have tension or pressure, or it'd almost make me feel worse. Like, why isn't it working? It's another thing you can't do, my inner voice might say. So it was confusing at times. But like, why is it that some things work for some people, but not for others? And that's kind of what I want to explore a little bit today. So there is your way. And that's the bit that maybe most people don't necessarily always land on, because you're a unique individual. You do have a unique thumbprint, fingerprint. There's only one of you in the universe ever. So is it that much of a stretch to think that maybe there's a certain way that things work for you, your way? Now, I was talking to somebody a few days ago where this came to mind, where a potential new client, and they made a comment around, oh, look, I was saying, where do you want my help? And they said, well, I need to do certain things better. I need to, in terms of behaviors and habits. And out of curiosity, I said, why? Why do you feel you need to do those? Because this person on the outside looking in is doing quite well. And they said, well, because everybody else is, and I guess I should be. But that's a classic example to me of, there was no reason for this person to be doing it. They've obviously telling themselves they're doing it the wrong way. He's saying, I need to get you to help me do it the right way. And I'm going to say to him, actually, there is no right way. What's your way? Let's figure that out. Because if we find your approach to something that suits you, well, then it's going to stick. It's going to feel easier. And in fact, it's going to be kind of effortless, and it's going to be much more enjoyable. And bottom line, it'll be much more impactful. Now, on a personal side, depending on how many of these episodes you've listened to, in episode 74, I interviewed a lady called Helen Erlen. And the reason I did was because she discovered, I think over 30 years ago, something that's now called Erlen syndrome. And the reason I was curious about that was because my daughter Jane was diagnosed with it. Now, most people still haven't heard of Erlen syndrome. I think it's, to me, probably the dyslexia of our time. And as in when I was growing up, dyslexia didn't exist. Now it's everywhere and people get help with it. Whereas with Erlen, there's no assistance really with it. But thanks be to God, someone like Helen Erlen has created support around something that is very much real, but it's just different. And essentially, what is Erlen syndrome? It's where someone's brain has difficulty processing certain wavelengths of light, is really what it is. So it kind of knocks the brain out of its kind of natural homeostasis, And that causes problems in terms of physical experience like headaches or blinding, not being able to kind of even function properly, affects study, affects things like that. And in relation to study, this was, from my point of view, I was always thinking, oh, great, when I have kids, or if I'm lucky enough to have kids, I'll share some of the stuff that I've learned over the years that really help you in terms of learning, like mind maps and different ways you can learn. And so I remember sitting down a few years ago with Jane very enthusiastically when she went into secondary school and saying, hey, I think this is going to help you. And it just didn't work. It just did not work. And it was around the time we were trying to figure out, we didn't know that she had this thing called Erlen, but she just literally completely did not get what I was saying. And it was so confusing for me because I'm thinking, hang on, this is the right way. This is the way it works. But it fundamentally just didn't work. I could see it was actually causing a problem. So I backed off. And as we've gone on the journey with Jane to help her understand her brain and how it works the way it works by thankfully understanding Erlen syndrome, it's really made such a difference that we've understood, well, this is your way. And what's interesting now when she studies is that she does things that I would never do. For example, she likes to have music on and it helps her to study because it helps her brain. It's her way. I remember ringing her a few weeks ago and she was studying biology. But when I rang her, she was playing the guitar. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, well, I'm studying. I said, why are you playing the guitar? She said, I've just realized that it helps me retain information much quicker. Now, I could never do that. That's not my way. Most people, that wouldn't be the right way. But for Jane, it is the right way. And I think it's an important lesson there, is that there's lots of different learning styles for sure. Some are very visual. Some are more auditory in terms of hearing, like to hear audios. That's maybe why you're listening to this podcast. Or some people are very kinesthetic, or they like to feel things with their hands. That's all part of that. Another thing is that in terms of when it comes to thinking, some people are internal processes and some people are external processors. So an internal processor, somebody who maybe says, I need to go away and have a little think about this, and they'll sit down and go away privately and maybe just have a think. And I need time to think. Other people don't like to do that. Sometimes people they're more external. They only discover what they're thinking as they talk it out with somebody. So for some of my clients who are entrepreneurs and CEOs and leaders, some of them literally only know what they're thinking as they talk it out with me. And they're more external processors. What's the right way? Whatever way works for them. So it's funny, from my point of view, as you probably know, I've written a couple of books. I've also written a couple of plays, and I love to write. But it took me a while to figure out that it's okay to write in a way that suits me. So, for example, when I wrote my book, The Inner CEO, I don't like to sit, like I'm sitting right now in my office in Wicklow in Ireland, and I'm recording this podcast. This is where I like to record the podcast. But I don't write here. For some reason, it just doesn't seem to be me. It's not my way. What's my way? Well, two favorite ways that I wrote the book, The Inner CEO. One was I would go to my local cafe called Mount Usher Gardens. It's run by a company called Avoca in Ashford. And I would sit there, and I my favorite is when it's half full, there's a bit of noise. I love this kind of noise around me, and I seem to go into the zone, and that's my way. And my second favorite way is to get in my car, bring the laptop or the iPad, go somewhere beside the sea, look out at the sea, put on a little bit of light music, and then just write. Working at my desk doesn't work for me. Other people, I know that what I'm describing doesn't work for them. But this comes into everything. And I think because perhaps of the way we were conditioned growing up, where maybe we were all taught to kind of think the same way or learn the same things in school, nobody really encouraged anybody, and still don't, as far as I can see, to kind of uncover what's your way. Which brings me to something like meditation, which you don't need to do to be enlightened or even to bring in a better state. It works for some people, but it doesn't work for others. I mean, for example, I know people who meditate who have massive egos, and they're the least spiritual people that I know, but they love telling you about their meditation. I know people who have never meditated, who are more present, have a better state and more alive than experienced meditators. So what's that about? I mean, I enjoy meditation. I think it works for me, and it seems to work for many other people. And I see there's lots of different ways you can use it, especially in terms of positive programming as much as silence. But if it's not your thing, I wouldn't be beating yourself up about it. There's probably something else. That's why other people maybe it's going for a cycle, going for a swim, talking to a friend, going for a slow walk in nature, going for a hike. There's so many ways you can enter a state of meditation rather than the act of meditation. But my point again is, what's your way? So, what is your way? And what about the people around you? Your partner, husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, your team? What's their way? That's one of the things, maybe one of the gifts that I got as a father and as a human because of Jane, my daughter, and her experience. And then I suppose I also brought that lens into Sam, my son, who has dyslexia and has a different way of learning again. And I think it's just too easy to kind of try and force our way onto other people. But most importantly, you have to start with yourself first and say, well, what is my way? What works for me? Regardless of what my mind might be saying is the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, what is my way? And I think we have to kind of watch out for not making the mistake of my way or the highway when it comes to communication. Because again, when you're dealing as a leader, whether you're a leader in a business or a charity or a family, we can get caught up with my way. Whereas there's people around us who have a different take on the world. Sometimes you have to maybe put down the foot, but most of the time that's probably not going to work. Definitely not. And it is curious to me that the world is obsessed with finding the right way, but what really matters is finding your way. And maybe from today, from listening to this podcast, you might look a little bit more closely to figure that out. That's it for today. Ciao for now.